gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for coming out to learn the facts about the ERA. We hope you will leave here today armed with facts and can spread a knowledgeable word about the ERA, which is Proposition 1 on the November ballot. The League of Women, and the program today is presented by the League of Women Voters of Larchmont-Mamaroneck. The League is a nonpartisan political organization that does not endorse candidates or political parties. We study in depth, that is, the pros and cons of issues of public policy, issues of national interest to local, and after a consensus of our members, may take a position on that issue. For example, we have positions on voting rights, environmental laws, education, health care, and women's reproductive health. You name it, the League has probably studied it and has reached a consensus position. Thank you to the Library of Larchmont for letting us use their venue, and to the Village of Larchmont, particularly Mayor Sarah Bauer, to our presenter, Tyler Davis, LMC Media, Beth Radow, my co-president of the League of Women Voters, Max Zuckman, who designed the flyer that you've all seen, and especially to Terry Toll, who has been our local rep for the New York ERA for the last 18 months and has worked with the League's coalition partners, New Yorkers for Equal Rights, and you can see all the information about ERA that she has pulled together, on the table at the entrance. If you're interested in volunteering on the campaign, please talk to Terry. Okay, I want to acknowledge the elected officials who are with us today. George Latimer, who is the county executive and candidate for Congress in CD 16. And are there any other public officials or candidates who I don't recognize that are here today? Okay, well, George, thank you for coming. Let's see. I want to inform you of the debates that the League of Women Voters will be holding before the election. For the Congressional District 16, that will be October 17th at 7 p.m. in the White Plains Library Auditorium. You can go in person, but it will also be taped, and you'll be able to get a link to it on the website of the Westchester League of Women Voters, as well as our local website, League of Women Voters of Larchmont-Mamaroneck. There will also be holding a debate for the New York Senate District 37. That's the district currently held by Shelley Mayer. She'll be debating her opponent, Tricia Lancy, and that will be October 22nd at 7 p.m., also at the White Plains Library Auditorium. It will also be taped, and the link will be made available. So, before we hear from Tyler, a few basics, important dates on voting. November 5th is Election Day. Early voting is October 26th to November 3rd. You can register in person or online until October 26th. Your registration has to be received by the Board of Elections by October 26th. You may apply for an absentee ballot or vote by early mail in person up through Election Day, November 5th. As far as getting an early ballot, you can apply for one up through November 4th, but you'll have to go to the Board of Elections. And the Board of Elections is in White Plains, 25 Caropus. Okay. October 26th is a golden day. If people not registered to vote can show up at an early voting poll, register to vote, and also vote during the first day of early voting. Okay. And this is just the basics. If you have a special situation or a question, please go to the Board of Elections website, the Westchester Board of Elections, or check the League of Women Voters Voters Guide, which is vote411.org. And you'll find all the information. If you any questions that you might have will be answered at one of those two sites. Okay, our speaker Tyler Davis is going to speak for about 25 to 30 minutes, followed by Q&A. If you have comments, we're going to give you a minute and a half, and at that point cut you off. So no long speeches. Start preparing your bullet points if you have a comment. And please let others ask a question before you ask a second question. Okay, I'm going to turn the program over to Beth Radow, who will introduce our speaker. Thank you.
How y'all doing? This is a very complicated topic. We've got an hour or a little bit less. There is so much more information on our website and League of Women Voters New York State. So we're going to scratch the surface and do the best we can. And we're very lucky to have Tyler Davis with us today. Tyler Davis serves as Planned Parenthood Hudson Peconix campaign specialist of advocacy and government relations. He works to align community organizing, government relations, and communications strategies to create state-level policy change in pursuit of sexual and reproductive freedom. Tyler has been advocating for almost 3 years for Proposal 1, also known as the New York Equal Rights Amendment, or Prop 1, and that's the way you're going to see it, Prop 1, including by organizing petitions, educational presentations, and lobby days in Albany. After the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, Tyler organized a rally outside of the state Senate Majority Leader's district office to advocate for the legislature to return to Albany to vote to put the New York ERA on the ballot in 2024, which, if passed by voters, will amend the New York State Constitution. Previously, Tyler worked for a communications firm where he planned and executed advocacy campaigns primarily in the healthcare and energy sectors. Tyler holds a bachelor's degree in foreign affairs and African American and African studies from the University of Virginia. As abortion rights and overall reproductive rights are being weakened or eliminated around the country on a regular basis, and discrimination based on a person's national origin, age, disability, and personal identity choices continues to exist, Prop 1 offers voters the opportunity to affirm that abortion, reproductive choices, related healthcare availability, along with other existing protections of personal rights, won't be eliminated by the whims of politicians. The next several weeks will be critical to ensure New York State voters know to flip the ballot to vote for Prop 1. Please join me in welcoming Tyler Davis, who will educate us on the details of Prop 1.
Thank you so much for that, Beth. I'll get my presentation back up. My name is Tyler Davis. I am the campaign specialist of advocacy and government relations at Planned Parenthood Hudson-Peconic. Planned Parenthood Hudson-Peconic is a sexual and reproductive health care and rights organization and we are based in Westchester County, Suffolk.
Could you pick up the mic a little bit?
Sure. Rockland, is that good for you? Can you hear me now? Excellent. Rockland and Putnam counties, and so we are in those 4 counties. We are part of the coalition New Yorkers for Equal Rights. We have been working on getting Proposal 1 to the ballot since I started almost 3 years ago, and now we are here. We are 36 or 37 days, I lose count sometimes, till we go to the polls to vote. And so with that, what we're going to talk about today, we're first going to go over what Proposal 1 is, the very basics of what it is, how Proposal 1 provides protections and to whom, how to vote for Proposal 1, and at the very end, I'll answer questions. I will do the best I can. I don't have a law degree. Some people here do, and we're very lucky. But I will do my best to get you answers to those questions. And with that, we can jump in. What is Proposal 1? Proposal 1 is a ballot proposal to clarify and strengthen protections for people who experience discrimination. It is a proposal to amend the state constitution. And by ballot proposal, I mean voters get to decide whether it passes. The state legislature has already done its job. They have already voted to allow it to come to be on the ballot. And so one really key part of this is this would only apply to discrimination by the government. There are a variety of other laws that are still in place that will allow, that will protect discrimination in a variety of other ways. But this one, Proposal 1, is focused on discrimination by the government. Proposal 1 will create stronger protections for equality than those currently found in the federal Constitution. It increases who is protected and bolsters how they're protected. I want to emphasize how important this is right now. As we've seen the Supreme Court roll back voting rights, as we've seen them roll back reproductive rights, it feels like every time the Supreme Court is in session, June, when they release their big opinions, comes around, and we're all just holding our breath, waiting to see who is on the chopping block next. And so we just wait to see whose rights will be, who's going to be less free today or tomorrow than they were today. That's how it feels at this point, anytime Supreme Court decisions are released. And so we don't have very much time until Election Day. And at this point, we can't change what the Supreme Court does until Election Day. But we can change our own corner of the world, New York State. We do have this ballot proposal, and so we have the opportunity to make New York fair for everybody, to create those protections for equality right here. And so that is what Proposal 1 is all about. And so, who would be protected by Proposal 1? So, it includes 5 protected classes: ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, and sex. Sex includes sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy. And so, these categories, it's important to keep in mind, they have not all been granted protection. Pregnancy and pregnancy outcomes in particular, and of course reproductive health care, have been unevenly given protections across our country. And so these are protected classes that would now be in our state constitution. And so I want to talk a little bit about how there are actually 2 existing protected classes in our state constitution, those based on race and religion. And that's because in 1938, the state constitution was amended and these two categories were added in. That's really nice. That was great. But unfortunately, New York State's courts have interpreted this to mean, it's really interpreted this in a way that's more symbolic than anything else. It's not substantive. So if somebody who is a racial minority who experiences discrimination in New York State, they actually can't go and sue or defend their rights in court with the New York State Constitution. The New York State courts have interpreted this civil rights clause in our state constitution as not being self-executing, which is a really fancy legalistic way of saying that until the legislature passes another law that says that they can use our state constitution to defend their rights, they can't. So it's really a symbolic measure that's aspirational, but not substantive, has no teeth. And so Proposal 1 would fix this. And so it would allow people based on race and religion to use the New York State Constitution to defend their rights. This is really important in addition to the protected classes, the 5 I just mentioned, because it provides a new tool to challenge discrimination by government agencies that are usually very difficult to hold accountable. That includes law enforcement, prisons and jails, and public benefits agencies. And so this empowers people who've experienced discrimination to be able to hold some of the most difficult agencies accountable. And so Proposal 1 really is about closing the gaps in the law that exist. And so I want to turn for a moment to talk about pregnant people. How exactly would pregnant people be protected by Proposal 1? So I have this map here. This map is from the Guttmacher Institute. And I want to talk about how, following the overturn of Roe v. Wade in June of 2022, this map has changed quite a bit. As you see in orange, those are the most restrictive states that have abortion bans or abortion restrictions. In blue, those are the ones with the fewest restrictions. And so this is a very orange map now. We have had about 22 states enact severe abortion bans since Roe v. Wade was overturned. This is difficult to keep up with. I do this for a living, and this changes constantly. I'll be in meetings with coworkers, and we'll be talking about this. I'm like, well, did you hear about this one who's introduced a law, and this lawsuit here, and this map keeps changing, and how many states is it again? And so this has actually really created an abortion access crisis in and of itself, because people don't know what their rights are, because this is constantly changing across the country. If you don't know what your rights are, it's hard to exercise them. And so that in and of itself creates a difficulty for people to go and get the health care they need. And so Proposal 1 helps us right here in New York State clarify that reproductive health care is a fundamental right, that we have a right to do this. Because at Planned Parenthood Hudson-Peconic, we're fortunate to be in New York, but we've had patients come into our health centers and look at the doctor and say, is this legal? Right here in New York. They didn't even know whether the health care they were about to get was legal. They wanted to make sure. It is completely confusing to so many people, and there's just so few people who can keep up with this all the time. And so Proposal 1 makes it even clearer that reproductive health care is a fundamental right here in New York State. And so Proposal 1, when it comes to reproductive health care, would do a few things that are protective. It would prevent New York State's government from implementing a statewide abortion ban, ending state funding for abortion via Medicaid. And I want to pause here on the Medicaid. Over 70% of Planned Parenthood Hudson-Peconic's patients use Medicaid. Almost 50% of births in New York State are covered by Medicaid. Medicaid is an incredibly important access point for healthcare in New York State. And so you can bet if there was ever change in our state legislature and more anti-healthcare, anti-reproductive healthcare politicians came into power, you can bet this is the one they would target. This is the one that's easiest to target. So ending state funding for abortion via Medicaid, this Proposal 1 would directly address that.
Could you just repeat, you said 50% of the births in New York State?
Yeah, 50%, almost 50% of the births in New York State are covered by Medicaid. And over 70% of Planned Parenthood Hudson Connects patients use Medicaid for healthcare services. And so incredibly important for the access to reproductive healthcare and all forms of healthcare, really. It would also prevent New York State from banning private insurance coverage of reproductive healthcare services. It would ban the state from prosecuting or criminalizing miscarriage and neonatal loss, which I'm going to get to more in a moment. That's an increasing problem. And lastly, it would ban the state from, or prevent the state from adding medically unnecessary burdens on patients or facilities. And so, in the 90s, there was a Supreme Court case, Planned Parenthood v. Casey, that while it upheld Roe v. Wade, it did allow for all of these other trivial, medically unnecessary restrictions to be applied across the country, in particular to reproductive health care providers. And so for years and years and years leading up to the overturn of Roe, that was the main strategy, was to poke holes into the access of reproductive health care. And so this makes it clear that we are not going there, we are not doing that anymore. And so these are just a few of the protections. It is not an exhaustive list, but it is an important list. And so I also want to talk about pregnancy and pregnancy outcomes. Pregnancy discrimination does not currently constitute violate the New York or federal constitution. That's because it doesn't constitute sex discrimination. That was ruled to be the case in 1974, that it doesn't constitute sex discrimination. That is still the court's ruling to this day. In response, in 1978, Congress passed the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, but that only covers pregnant people in matters of employment. All the other ways that if you're pregnant that you interact in the world, you are open to discrimination. And so what we have found that, in particular for pregnancy outcomes, which are, it differentiates because how your pregnancy ends, once it's ended, you can be discriminated against or face criminal and legal consequences for that outcome. And so we have found that more and more people are being penalized for their pregnancy outcomes as well. Legal consequences can result from stillbirths and pregnancy loss, neonatal death, and abortion. And this is something that hasn't gotten a lot of attention compared to some of the other issues. It's been happening for a good while now, and we're seeing it increase, including in New York State. So I just want to share a couple of statistics around this and how pregnancy is being criminalized. So between 1973 and 2005, there were 413 cases where a pregnancy or pregnancy outcome was the main factor in a woman's loss of liberty or her incarceration. 413. Of those 413, 52% were Black women, 71% were low-income women. And so this really just kind of demonstrates how pregnancy and pregnancy outcome discrimination overlaps with other forms of discrimination as well. It kind of has this compounding effect. But it only got worse from there. Between 2006 and 2021, over 1,200 women were prosecuted and lost their liberty due to a pregnancy or pregnancy outcome. So I also want to keep in mind here, or emphasize here, that these were the cases that resulted in a loss of liberty or incarceration. These weren't all the cases that were brought forward, because we know that if somebody goes to trial, if they face charges, that in and of itself can ruin somebody's life. That can seriously damage somebody's life. So these were only the ones that led to some kind of incarceration. And so this problem is getting worse. And we expect in 2022, to now, we've seen more headlines, more cases, and so this will only get worse. And to give this some texture, I polled, this was before Roe v. Wade was overturned, because we have been working on it for this long. All of these headlines, they were not hard to find. All you had to do was go on Google and type in pregnancy outcome discrimination or something similar to that, and it pulled all of these headlines about how it's been happening more and more. And so I'll read a few of them. This woman delivered a stillborn baby. Now she's in jail and accused of murder. Manslaughter conviction of 21-year-old Oklahoma woman who suffered miscarriage sparks outcry. Eating poppy seed cake got this pregnant woman reported to child services. Ending Roe could send more women to prison for miscarrying. And this one's really something. Alabama woman shot while pregnant, charged with death of fetus. So with that woman in particular, she got into an argument, a verbal altercation. The person she was arguing with, pulled out a gun and shot her, and her fetus died. And so the woman who was shot was the one who was charged for the death of her fetus. I mean, this is really dystopian, and we're not really talking about this enough. And so this is really what Proposal 1 does. One of the most important parts is it closes these gaps. It is protective against this kind of criminalization of pregnant people across the board. And so I wanted to get local. A little too often in my work, I see a lot of people try and say that we are in New York, we are lucky, but that this doesn't happen here, this happens in those other states. This actually happens in New York State too, unfortunately. So Jennifer Jorgensen was a woman from Long Island. She was pregnant. She got in her car to drive. She had a really bad car accident. She then had to have an emergency delivery as a result of that car accident. 6 days later, her baby died. Pretty tragic story. But the tragedy doesn't stop there. She was then charged for manslaughter for the death of her baby because she was the one driving and got into a car accident. And so it took her 7 years to get those charges tossed. 7 years. Right here on Long Island. This wasn't that long ago. It was 2015, 2016 when those charges were tossed. And so and the problem here also wasn't just that this happened, it's that the door is wide open for it to happen again, because while the judge made the correct call in tossing these charges, he ruled pretty narrowly. He left it wide open for this to be able to happen again. He didn't rule that this was ridiculous. He ruled that in this particular case, she couldn't be charged. And so there's nothing to say that this won't happen again. In fact, I am sure there are stories out there where this is happening right now. So this is very much a local issue. It's very much happening in the greater New York area. And so I want to make sure people understand the urgency around this. This isn't something that just happens to other states. It happens to us as well. And so what if we pass Proposal 1? And so how does this work? What would happen when discrimination occurs? And so I just want to recap. Right now, protected classes, there's only 2 of them, race and religion, can't use the New York State Constitution to defend their rights, to bring forth a viable case. With Proposal 1, we get those 2, race and religion, those 2 protected classes get to actually vindicate their rights in court, as well as those 5 other inclusions also get to vindicate their rights in court if they face discrimination. I just want to make note here that a lot of people want to know everything about how this will protect people who face discrimination in all kinds of ways, and I certainly understand that desire to know. But we don't have the legal precedent yet. It hasn't been passed yet. We don't know everything that'll happen. But the bottom line is this provides a tool that we don't currently have to protect people who face discrimination. It is almost always better to have more tools than fewer. And so we know that there's a variety of new ways to protect people. And so that is the bottom line. And so when do we get to vote on Proposal 1? We are getting close. Election Day, that is going to be on Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. We are 36, 37, somewhere around that amount of time, days left till Election Day. And so I'm sure many people have done this before, gone and voted, but I want to provide some visuals about how to actually go vote, because there are a lot of people who still have never voted. So when you go to vote, you are handed a ballot. This is the front page of the ballot. It has names of candidates, it has their offices, and that's the front. Names of people and their offices. And so on the back page, is where ballot proposals go. There is only one ballot proposal this year, that is Proposal 1. So in order to vote for that, you must remember to flip your ballot. And please tell everybody you know to please flip their ballot. They are not likely to tell you when you go to your polling place. But we have to remember to flip the ballot. It is on the back. And if you are in support of Prop 1, you will want to vote yes. And so that's the big, my big plug is please flip your ballot. And so with that, we covered a lot of information pretty quickly. I am happy to take questions.
Well, if no one else will speak up, I will ask you a question.
It's being recorded, so we'll give it to you.
Okay.
There's people back here too.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for having this meeting, because most of us don't know anything about Proposition 1. This has been a great secret. If you've been working on it for 3 years, why don't we know anything about it? You said it's complicated. I can see it's complicated. We need to learn about it, and we need to discuss it. That's what democracy is. This is a sneak attack. I don't like this at all. I don't know what I truly feel about this Proposition 1, but I don't like having to discuss it 37 days before November 5th. What on earth is going on here?
Well, like I mentioned, I knew about it before I even moved to New York. So I've been working on it since about December 2021.
We don't know.
And so it has been in the press. It has been, the governor has given interviews in the New York Times about it. I would encourage you to get more information. There is a website you can go to get more information. The New York Civil Liberties Union has a really, really great memo that lays all of this out in great detail. I have relied on the New York Civil Liberties Union to learn more information about this as we've gone along. As well as, I would recommend the New York Civil Liberties Union memo so you can get the most up-to-date, the most detailed information.
I just think that if people would understand how this process works, it would make it clearer. The New York State Legislature has passed this in 2 successive sessions of the legislature. This doesn't just happen overnight. This is 2 sessions of the legislature before it can even go on the ballot. So if you at all are interested in what's going on in your state, then you should know that that's the kind of way this works. It didn't just pop up. It didn't just happen. It's been in process for 3 years at least.
Hi, 2 quick questions. One, does the League of Women Voters, either at the state level, the Westchester County level, or the local levels, take a position on this? And 2, are the ballots required to say on the side where people are focusing on the candidates, flip the ballot over?
I can answer the second one real quick. There's nothing that's going to say I don't believe that to flip the ballot over. You're just going to have to remember. And please tell everybody you know to make sure to flip your ballot.
The answer to your question is yes, the League of Women Voters supports Proposition 1.
Thank you.
Yeah, got limited room.
That's quite Tyler, good presentation, thank you. Here's a question for you, it's hypothetical. Let's assume this proposal is passed and it becomes part of the state constitution. Let us also assume, and I hope this doesn't happen, but if we have a future Congress that passes an anti-abortion ban, and it's signed into law, would that negate this amendment? And I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I'm coming from Article 6 of the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution. Would that negate it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, this won't hold up to a national.
The federal, there's the Supreme Article 6.
We understand, and it could.
It could, so it could negate it.
So yeah, if there's a national abortion ban with Congress passes and the president signs into law, yes, that will supersede this.
I see. And other states would have a similar proposition on the ballot this fall. If they pass theirs, they could be exposed the same way.
So to that, we get that question quite a bit. It is always a concern, but we need to be, that's why I tell people we can't just advocate in one space, we have to advocate, do many things at the same
I
time.
mean, the point would be that when you go to the ballot and vote, you would be incentivized, if you are in favor of Proposition 1, to vote for politicians who support it, both up ballot and down ballot. And we'd also like to welcome Assembly Member Steve Otis. Who else has a question? Fran, can you, I don't know if I can stretch that far, but I can repeat your question.
It said that Proposition 1 is the only proposition, but I understand in other areas that they do have other propositions, as for New York City has 6 propositions.
Well, I should clarify, this will be the only state level proposal. So you might have other local ones. I also understand that some localities are also voting at other times for different things, but on the state level, this will be the only one that you'll see.
Just a quick thing in terms of the timing, and Marlene alluded to this. This actually passed, this exact language passed in 2022, and then again in 2023. Those were the 2 successive legislatures. So it isn't even that we did it like 2000. It's been 3 years that the language has been out there for people to look over. And I would say there are a lot of websites out there that have information for people to look at, the pros and cons, and League of Women Voters is one of them. There's one particularly in favor of passing it. There's the Civil Liberties Union, and there are others. So there's plenty of information out there for people to weigh in. But New York does have this process by which any constitutional amendment has built-in lead time. It's 2 differently elected legislatures. So a legislature in 2023, 24, you couldn't pass it in 23, 24, have it on the ballot in 24. There has to be another election with a different legislature passing it one of the times.
Thank you.
I'll also add to that we also got media coverage when I held a rally outside of the State Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins' office in Yonkers. We got local media coverage, and her staff was very gracious in putting up with me that day and encouraging the governor to call an extraordinary session to bring everybody back to Albany after session had already ended. And so this has been quite a long fight to get this to the ballot, and along the way we've had spikes in media coverage around it.
So, hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm very much in support of this amendment. I have become aware of how difficult it is to amend our Constitution. So, like unlike in Kansas or other states where you can just collect signatures and have a proposal put on the ballot, as Steve was just describing, it's actually very, very difficult. So a huge amount of due diligence and work has gone into this amendment. So it would be really awful to actually not see this pass, because basically we'd have to start all over again. And this happened 3 years ago. There were 2 voting rights amendments that were on the ballot, and they failed because there was an opposition campaign. So those of us who support it, we can't just rely on the good faith voters to just get it. We have to actually get out the yes vote. And to that end, I would just like to point out something that I just found out myself, is that the name of the amendment on the back of the ballot is Proposal 1 throughout the state. And you'll have to fill in a couple of words for me. It's not called the Equal Rights Amendment, it's called something unequal treatment. So in talking with people about it, we can say it's Proposal 1, but if they've never heard the title of the amendment, they might actually feel nervous and think, well, is this what I was talking to this person about? So can you supply the full title of the amendment as it appears on the ballot?
Sure. I actually don't have it off the top of my head, but it is not going to be the New York Equal Rights Amendment. But we can also, in a follow-up, you guys, if you have signed up and send your email, we can also send you the direct link to the language so you know exactly where it's coming from.
I know it includes the phrase unequal treatment. That's about it.
Hi there. I have a question about one of your examples, which is the New York State example, the woman out, I guess, on Long Island who was in a car accident, and how this proposal would possibly change a whole set of New York law based upon negligence and also intentional act. And I'd love to find out a few more details about that actual case, because to me it's not strictly within the pregnancy person's protections. I mean, should she be protected from prosecution for what might have been a negligent act on her part? The child died. I mean, I'm looking at this from the opposite point of view, but it just confuses me if this would be protection against that kind of act.
Yes, because I can't speak to everybody's position, but it's our position that we should not be criminalizing pregnant people for their pregnancy outcomes. That's not any way to treat people. It's not any way to encourage people to get the health care they need. And at PPHP, we really focus on ensuring people have the health care they need, and we do patient-centered care. Criminalizing people when they need health care is just, and when you have an accident like that, need an emergency delivery, that is health care. That's not patient-centered care. That's not what we believe. We believe people should be able to receive the care that they need without criminalizing them.
I think we need to call it. We're a little over 4. I want to thank everybody for coming. If you have any follow-up questions, please leave them. I want to thank Tyler Davis for an excellent presentation, and for everybody for voting on Election Day.